Get ready, because what we are about to tell you is far more disturbing than any science fiction movie. Far from being a narrative nightmare, the threat we face is far more concrete and frightening. Our Earth is one step away from plunging into total climate chaos, driven by what scientists fear could be an inexorable, runaway greenhouse effect. Imagine a future where our planet turns into a hellish oven, similar to Venus, and get ready for a journey that will explore how and why this could happen. The false sense of security. In the 1990s, climatology experts warned us. Global warming was about to become a reality. The polar ice caps would melt, the seas would engulf entire countries, and extreme weather events would become the norm. However, with the beginning of the new millennium, it seemed that the apocalyptic predictions had been excessive. Global temperatures had not reached the expected peaks, and many of us began to dismiss these warnings as exaggerations by overly pessimistic scientists. But don't let this apparent tranquility fool you. What might seem like a temporary calm is actually a respite before the storm. The increase in temperatures and the intensification of extreme phenomena are not simply a matter of climate statistics. They are signs of a profound and devastating change that is preparing to explode in ways we can only begin to imagine. The imminent collapse, from period of stability to climate chaos. Imagine our climate as a delicate balance. At the moment, it looks like it's swinging, but it's far from falling into an abyss. However, this balance is fragile. Each increase in temperature leads to a series of chain reactions that can amplify warming in uncontrollable ways. The polar ice caps melt, releasing fresh water into the seas and causing sea levels to rise. Mountain glaciers retreat, transforming waterways from quiet streams to rushing rivers that tear away everything in their path. Coastal cities begin to be submerged. Islands disappear, and entire countries are faced with the inevitable disappearance under rising waters. But the most disturbing thing is what happens immediately after. A series of extreme weather events. Tornadoes and hurricanes strike with unprecedented force, and the frequency of these events becomes a new norm. Crops fail and food resources run out. Tropical diseases such as malaria and dengue are moving to higher latitudes, endangering populations that have never faced such threats. This chaos is not an isolated event, but the beginning of a spiral towards a future in which our civilization could be wiped out. The greenhouse effect, out of control, an unstoppable chain reaction. The worst nightmare is that this is not a linear process, is exponential. As temperatures rise, ocean and river waters evaporate more quickly. This evaporation increases the concentration of water vapor in the atmosphere, which in turn amplifies the greenhouse effect, creating a self-destructive cycle. Water vapor is a powerful greenhouse gas. When it increases its concentration in the atmosphere, it traps more heat and increases temperatures even further. This leads to increased evaporation and thus a further increase in greenhouse gases. This feedback loop could trigger the inevitable runaway greenhouse effect. Imagine a world where polar ice is not only melting, but open water is contributing to global warming that cannot be stopped. The fate of Venus, a disturbing parallel. To understand the horror of this situation, just look at our closest neighbor, Venus. Scientists have found that Venus, once likely an Earth-like planet, has suffered an extreme greenhouse effect. Its atmosphere is so dense and warm that lead and tin melt. This phenomenon was caused by a cascade of uncontrollable weather events that made Venus a hell of heat and pressure. This is the fate we risk facing if the out-of-control greenhouse effect were to take hold. As temperatures on Earth rise, our planet could turn into an inaccessible sphere of heat, with atmospheres so hot that any complex life is impossible. Conditions would become so extreme that, in the end, life as we know it could not survive, except perhaps for a few resistant microscopic organisms. The human response: what can we do? As this climate catastrophe approaches, it is critical to understand our collective response. Governments and scientists are desperately looking for solutions, but time is running out. Geoengineering technologies such as carbon capture and storage and solar radiation modification have been proposed as possible remedies. However, their effectiveness is uncertain, and their implementation is complex and expensive. The best solutions remain the immediate reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the transition to sustainable energy sources. We need to accelerate the adoption of clean technologies and invest in infrastructure resilience. But even with the most intense efforts, It may not be enough if the out-of-control greenhouse effect kicks in. We may be facing a race against time to save what's left of our living environment, an uncertain future. In conclusion, the risk of a future in which Earth becomes a Venus-like world is a concrete and disturbing possibility. Our current climate trajectory could lead to an environmental collapse that will render our planet uninhabitable for most life forms. The prospect of living on a hellish planet, where life is reduced to a minimum and resources are depleted, is a scenario that we must take seriously. If there is one lesson to be learned, it is that we must act now. Ignoring these signals and continuing as if nothing is happening could mean sealing our fate. Our ability to adapt and respond to this crisis will define not only our survival, but also that of future generations. The battle for our future begins today, and every action counts. The Earth, our only refuge, deserves every possible effort to preserve its habitability. If you're one of those who have the power to make a difference, remember, we only have one atmosphere and one planet. Act wisely and responsibly because the future of humanity depends on the choices we make today.